Hello. It's been a long time since I've done videos on Blender. In this series, I'm going to talk about how you can integrate or how you can use Blender as an asset creator and PlayCanvas as a sort of a game engine. For a few years, I've been playing around with Unity, and while I like Unity a lot, I found that I needed to create an application that was completely web-based using WebGL, and I kind of fell in love with the way PlayCanvas works. There's a lot of similarities, but I find it's much easier to use. And one of the really strong points of PlayCanvas is that you can use straight shader code, which is basically OpenGL, GLSL, directly with very little changes. And I found that that was somewhat difficult when I was trying to bring in GLSL shader code like vertex shaders, fragment shaders from Blender and trying to incorporate that into Unity. Unity uses CG as far as I remember, and I like to just go directly in. As it is, I'm learning too many languages. What you see on the screen right now is actually a screen capture of output from a PlayCanvas, and I imported in the Beethoven bust, and both these renderings here are actually using direct GLSL shaders. It's not using the kind of default materials that you can get with PlayCanvas, but you can actually use fragment and vertex shaders, and I'll show that probably in some subsequent videos. Right now I just want a real quick introduction and try to keep this video down 25 minutes or less. Introduction on how to use PlayCanvas and do a simple import from Blender. Find a model, a nice model online, and then do some tweaking in Blender and export it out and bring it into PlayCanvas. But first, I will bring up the PlayCanvas website. So let's go into here, and let's go to PlayCanvas. Now, PlayCanvas is actually free, or for a nominal subscription of only $15 a month. You can get a personal version, and then there's kind of a pro version that's $50 a month. And basically what the difference is in the free version, you can store up to about 200 megabytes of projects, and in the $15 a month personal version, you can do about a gigabyte, and then the pro version has 10 gigabytes. So you can do quite a bit with 1 gigabyte. So I'm using the personal version for this demo. And what I'm going to do, this is actually my account here. I'm going to just go really quickly to the main, what you would see if you haven't registered. You would see a bunch of demos, and there's quite a few demos here. They're pretty impressive, using all kinds of techniques. You can really easily make some pretty nice games using this. I'm not saying it's necessarily equivalent to Unity or some of the other engines, but it's certainly very easy to use, and it certainly I found a lot less limitations. So in here, let's see if there's any one to kind of show. I think there's an impressive one. So I'll just let you go to this website, playcanvas.com, sort of explore some of the demos. What I'm going to show is you can go to this doc section. They have a pretty nice, easy to use documentation. And if you go to the tutorials, there's two parts. There's tutorials, and if you want to get into the nitty-gritty programming language, it uses JavaScript, which is really nice, and it's built on top of WebGL. One thing to say is the versions of the OpenGL, GLSL are a little different between Blender is using a more recent version and PlayCanvas is using a much earlier version. So sometimes you have to, when you're actually bringing in shaders from Blender, sometimes you have to do some conversions. So a fairly impressive thing, since this series is going to be going into shaders and what they are and so forth, I'll show an example of a demo here that's actually using shaders. Now the way this works is you click on create a project. Once you register, you can start creating these projects. And this example here shows an Earth where the Earth is actually rotating, and you can see it's actually got night and day, so it actually does a complete rotation of the Earth. And if you zoom in, whoa, if you zoom in enough in here, you can actually see the clouds. Now, when you actually create a project, you'll have, it'll allow you to go to the editor. You can click on the project itself and this particular thing here. So this is what you would see once you've registered. You have the ability to actually publish, and these could be unlisted, they can be private, or they can be public. And you can then just send a URL to somebody to look at. So if we look at this, if we play this here with the larger screen, this looks a little bit better here. As you can see, there's a cube map for the sky as you rotate through this thing, and then you can zoom in on this Earth. And if you zoom in close enough, you can see that it actually has several layers, and the clouds are kind of floating above the land here. Pretty impressive, and the shader logic is not too complex. What's really kind of cool is as this goes through the night, you can actually see you've got a night sky, some texture maps to use for the night side. So anyways, there's just tons of examples and tutorials, and so I will start creating a project from scratch and then do a simple import from Blender. So we will come back to this, and I'm actually making a variation of this of a Earth planet using a different technique. So let us go to since I am registered, I can go under here and look at my projects. And let me delete this. Let's experimenting with this. Delete this project. Okay, so these are some of the projects I've been playing around with. I'm going to create one from scratch and go into new. And you can have a completely blank one. I'm not going to do that because I want to have some basic code. They also have a virtual reality thing, which I won't be going into right now. So let's select this mode here, and this gives you a basic scene. So I'll click on that. And give it a name, demo. Great. So what you will have here is you'll have a little sandbox here. You can replace this. This will be sort of your icon, your image that's associated with your project. You can go into settings and create some artwork and pull it into here if you want. But right now I'm going to just I'm going to go into the editor. Nothing's been published on this, so you just see the editor option here. You don't see the play. I'll just go into it, and by default, it creates, it has a notion of scenes, very much like Unity does. So I'll click on main here, which is the default scene. And all this is a little box with some textures on it. If you go into here and run it, this will launch the PlayCanvas environment, and here is a very basic scene. And the back, you've got this kind of skybox. So let's go back to this. You can leave this up if you want. Go back into here and do a few changes. You'll notice that there's a lot of similarities if you're familiar with Unity, that you have a scene graph over here. You've got your root, you've got your camera, and similar to Unity, you have all these properties that are associated with these objects. So if we go to, let's say, we wanted to change slightly that skybox, the environment in the back, we could go to the settings and then go to rendering and then change this MIP to 1, and now you don't have the blur in here. So if you come back in here, you can kind of see, oh, you got a little city that's behind there. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to import a Blender model. I'm going to pull it from BlenderSwap, one of the Creative Commons model I can use, and then give a little credit to the person who created it. I'm going to bring in a space shuttle and remove this and show how this works. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off, so I can go into here and turn the skybox off. If you look here, you'll just have sort of like a blue-gray screen in the back. So I'm going to get rid of this model and delete it. And now we'll come back to this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch Blender and I'm going to pull something, a model. The model I'm interested in right now is, if we go to BlenderSwap.com, and if we search on something called Shuttle Orbiter, I'm going to be using this one. I kind of like this particular model. This one is, free to use with as long as you attribute some credit to the person who created it. And so I've already downloaded this. I'm going to bring in this model. The model actually has some texture maps. It has also some UV maps and so forth. And the way you can import models from Blender into PlayCanvas is using the FBX format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a fairly recent version. I've created a sandbox with all the code in Blender, and I've got it running. Again, this is not necessary for you. You can just bring up any regular old Blender, but I'm running this thing through my sandbox, and I've got a version I did on July 18th, 2018. And this is actually going to be running in the, this is some of the code and that we have here. I'm going to just be launching it directly. Like I said, you can just bring up any Blender and then just bring it in, because I may not be stepping through the code yet. So if we go into here and then do a start debugging, Blender will. So what I've done is bring Blender out here. So I've already downloaded that Blender file that has the shuttle, and I'll just bring it in. So I will have it somewhere here. I'll be using this version. Now this is set up in Blender Game. It's using the Blender Game render. Typically for this series, I'm going to do everything in cycles, the render cycles mode, because it gives me a lot more flexibility. I can create some pretty complex shader code from that, and then that whatever I see here will be represented pretty well in the PlayCanvas environment. So a few things I'm going to kind of show here, get an idea of what how this thing is set up. This thing already has, we go into here, click on this mode right here, which is data object. We notice that it already has defined UV coordinates. And I'm just kind of show you really quickly how to kind of render this thing in cycles mode, even though it was created in the Blender game mode. If I go into here, you just get this white model. I'm going to bring up, if I can grab this thing. Whoa. Get a screen here. And let's see, the first thing I'm going to do is, so we're in cycles render mode, and I'm going to go to the material and get rid of this previously defined material and just create a new one. So this will now create a very basic material in the nodes cycle render, and we've got to change this mode to material to be able to see it. Now in this particular rendering, the key for sort of importing stuff, and again this is not actually necessary yet until the next video, but because I'm not actually pulling in the GLSL code yet, but this model, all it needs is basically having a good texture map and some UV mapping things, and then save that out as an FBX, and we can actually pull that in to PlayCanvas. But I'm just going to show how you can essentially create a textured model here. Let me get rid of this. This is a little trick. If you want to break the connection, you can hold the control key down and essentially get rid of that. If we go into texture mode, create a texture node, and already the texture has been in this particular model, it's already been predefined. If you go into the texture itself, and then we attach this directly in here, you've got the model, the texture that we're going to use in PlayCanvas. If we wanted to and add some kind of sheen to it and stuff, we could typically go in and create a mix shader. And then one of my favorite nodes in 2.79 is this principled BSDF, and that allows you to kind of quickly get sort of a metallic look. I'm going to hook this into here, and then with the metallic, you can kind of set that up, and then this thing can be adjusted. Well, in any event, this is not necessary yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to export out this to an FBX file, and you typically, what I do is when I export out to PlayCanvas, use the FBX, I typically set the selected objects that I want, and then I switch to make sure that the Y is up and Z is forward. That is essentially what PlayCanvas is, the convention for PlayCanvas, and then I will essentially save that shuttle out. Now I've already done that. It's already stored, so I won't go through that now. So now I've got a Shuttle FBX that I can use. We'll go back to PlayCanvas. So I'll turn that off and I'll shut this guy down. All right, so how do we get this model in here? Pretty simple. I've stored the Shuttle FBX file here. So we've got this FBX file. All I have to do is come into this, and somewhere I can just drag in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder, right click on that, and call it Shuttle. And then I'm going to drag in the FBX into here. And what it does is it creates 3 different files. It brings over the material that we had created before in Blender. It creates this, it's got the original FBX file, and it creates this JSON file, which we're going to use to drag into our scene. So I can then just push this right into here. And now we've got, however, it's not looking quite the way we want it to look yet. What I needed was to export out the texture that we're using in Blender. So if we go back to Blender, we can go to we can go into the UV mode. And if we go into the image mode here, click on here, it's actually this file right here. And then essentially we have, and we can tell the UV map, what the texture map's going to look like. If we go into edit mode, select all, and now you can actually see how this UV map was created, which is kind of nice, how to paint all the different parts of the shuttle. So in order to get this image out, which is a what is it? It's a TGA file. You just do image and then do save as, and then save that to wherever you want. I've already done that. So with that particular file, this is the file itself, the target file. All I have to do is drag that into the PlayCanvas sandbox. And the texture map comes, it appears here. We now select the material we have that does not have this texture attached. We can come down into here, click on the fuse, and then just drag this right into here. And voila, you actually start to see the way the shuttle is looking. Okay, so now we can actually go and launch this and see how this model looks. Now by default, when we created that cube, it automatically created a nice camera where you can use the mouse drag. You can use the dragging the right mouse and then dragging the left mouse to kind of rotate, pan, and then using the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So you have this kind of thing. Now, to make this look a little bit fancier, we can actually add some specular highlights to this. So we can go to this material, And in the specular, we can look for something, use metal. And if we actually look at the other side, we can actually add some sort of sheen to this. That gives a little bit more of a metallic look. So within a fairly short period of time, we're able to import in a model into PlayCanvas and have it look fairly decent. Notice we don't have any lighting on this side. We could add, if we look and click on here, and notice our lights are, we have a light that is let's see. Sometimes the changes can be done in real time without you having to actually refresh the page. We could add, lights on the other side depending on what you want to do in your space thing. Now, one thing I'm going to quickly do before I close on this is showing you how to use a cube map. Now, we already have a cube map, and with this whole city thing, what I'm going to show real quickly is how you can put a sort of like a sky cube map on this. So if we go to a website, there is a website that I'll put the link in the document, essentially where you can create random of these cube maps of space. So if you click on here, you can essentially randomize. It creates a seed, and if you don't want the sun in there, you can check that off. But it's really kind of cool to create these kind of nebula. Now I've already done that. So essentially, to download this for PlayCanvas, you want to create for each of the sides of the cube map. You want to create these 10 by 1024 by 1024 bitmaps, PNG files. Create 6 of them for all the different the 6 different sides of a cube. And the quick way of doing that is by unchecking unified texture. If I come in here and say, oops, this is not. This works better in Chrome. Yeah, so copy image or save image as. If you uncheck this unified texture, then you save each of these out separately. And that's what I've already done. So I have these different, and you remember which side it is. For example, I've got back, bottom, top, front, back, and so forth. So what I'm going to do is go back to our environment here, and I'm going to drag those 6 files right into here. And I'm gonna remove these guys. I can go into here. And then I'll drag the rest of them. Okay, so I've got the 6 in here, and I've got names, top, and so forth. So now what we can do is we can go click on this, which if you don't have this already created, you can go into new asset and say cube map, and it creates one of these. So you need one of these cube map widgets, and now you've got these little slots. So what you want to do is drag each of these. So this is back. This one is bottom. This one's front. This one's left. right and top. And so that's defining the cube map itself, but we got to remember, if we go to the settings and render, we need to drag this thing, and we can change the name of this to you know, stars. We go to settings, and under this rendering, there's a slot in here for the skybox. We can just drag that in there. And instantly you got the space background in here, which is really super cool. Now there's a kind of a nice little trick. By default, they create a script for the camera. Now again, I'll go into how you actually attach scripts to each of these objects. When we created that default thing, it automatically attached this orbit camera and mouse input and so forth on here. And there's some cameras, and there's logic here. You know, we can actually go into the script. I won't do this until the next video. But you can actually grab some other types of camera logic that works a little bit better. It feels a bit smoother. And I'll probably stop now, and I'll go into that in the next video. But this gives you an idea of how quickly you can take a Blender object without actually, you know, I'm not using any special shader logic. That's all built in. So you can create these nice things and make some pretty nice models. Just like Unity, though, you can literally program all kinds of things, animations, and you can even import in animations that you created in Blender. It's a little tricky when I tried this some time ago, but once you know the tricks, it's pretty easy. So that is a quick introduction to PlayCanvas. A few things you can do is very similar to Unity. Is when you select objects, you have the ability to rotate them, translate them, size them. When you click on the object, it gives you basic parameters here. So for example, the position, rotation, and scale. And like I said, this is just the beginning of a very, very nice program. What's really exciting about it is the fact that you can actually superimpose user interface using CSS and HTML right on top of the 3D scene. Very easily done. So if you wanted to set some controls, you can do it directly within PlayCanvas. At the same time, you could actually have this as a viewer in a web page, where on the left side you could actually have the 3D viewer, and the right side you can actually have sort of a tree or an HTML section, and you can integrate those two together. And the way that's done is, right now this is run all on the servers, but you'll eventually be able to take this and then download this and run it standalone. So you can actually create it, and I've actually created where I can create my own web server and integrate that into my web server, and that's a bit more advanced, but we'll talk about that a little later. That's all for now.